The first thing Eli noticed was the silence. Not the comfortable hush of his Nebraska wheat fields at midnight. A silence punctuated by the rustle of dry stalks and the distant cry of a coyote. This was absolute, profound, as if the world itself had drawn a sharp breath and held it. He lowered his wrench, the grease-smeared metal suddenly cold in his hand. The familiar scent of diesel and earth momentarily forgotten. Above him, the vast prairie sky, usually a glittering tapestry flung from horizon to horizon, seemed wrong. The stars weren't gone exactly. They were dimmed, veiled, like distant porch lights switched off one by one. Pause. Then the pressure came. Not sound, but a physical weight, a low-frequency thrumming that vibrated deep in his bones and settled like cold lead in his stomach. It pressed against his eardrums, making him swallow hard. He looked up, craning his neck, and his breath hitched. Hanging low over the north quarter, silent and immense, was a shape, triangular, dark as spilled ink against a lesser dark, blotting out whole constellations. It possessed a terrible stillness, an unnatural solidity that made the surrounding night feel flimsy, insubstantial. Eli stumbled back, his boot catching on an irrigation hose. He landed hard on his backside, the wrench clattering away into the dirt. Softly, not possible. The thought was a frantic whisper in his skull, battling the overwhelming, silent hum that filled the air. Fear, cold and sharp, pricked the skin. This wasn't a weather balloon, not a trick of the atmosphere. This was here, present, watching. He scrambled backwards on his elbows, crab-like, his gaze locked on the impossible silhouette. It didn't move. It didn't emit light. It simply was a geometric wound in the fabric of the familiar night. He fumbled for his phone in his pocket, his fingers trembling so badly he almost dropped it. No signal. The little X in the corner mocked him. He was utterly alone under the gaze of the impossible. For what felt like hours, Eli lay frozen in the dirt, the chill seeping through his denim jacket. The oppressive silence and the bone-deep vibration were constants, a physical presence pressing down. He thought of his wife, Sarah, asleep in the farmhouse half a mile away, of his daughter, Lily, dreaming her 8-year-old dreams. A fierce, protective instinct surged through the fear. He couldn't stay here. He had to get to them. Slowly, painfully, he pushed himself up, every muscle protesting. He kept his eyes fixed on the shape as he backed towards his ancient pickup truck parked at the edge of the field. It remained motionless, a silent sentinel. He wrenched the truck door open, the sound unnaturally loud in the stillness, and fumbled the key into the ignition. The engine roared to life, a jarring, human sound against the alien silence. He slammed it into gear and spun the wheel, tires spitting dirt as he tore down the farm track towards the distant lights of home. The farmhouse porch light was a beacon, painfully normal. Eli skidded to a halt, gravel spraying, and practically fell out of the truck. He burst through the front door, startling Sarah awake on the couch where she'd been reading. "Eli? What on earth?" Her voice died as she saw his face, pale and sweat-streaked, eyes wide with a terror she'd never seen before. He slammed the door shut, bolting it with shaking hands. "Get Lily!" he rasped, his voice raw. "Get her now." And the shotgun. Sarah stared at him, her book slipping forgotten to the floor. She wiped sleep from her eyes, confusion warring with dawning alarm. "Eli, what is it? What happened?" He pointed a trembling finger towards the north window. "Out there, in the north quarter. Something not from here." Sarah's expression shifted from confusion to stark disbelief, then to a mirror of his own fear as she registered the sheer, primal terror in his eyes. She didn't question him further. She moved, swift and silent, padding down the hallway to Lily's room. Eli grabbed the old Remington shotgun from above the mantel, the worn with familiar and strangely grounding in his grip. He broke it open, checking the shells, his movements jerky but automatic. By the time Sarah returned, leading a sleepy, bewildered Lily by the hand, Eli was peering through a crack in the heavy curtains. The shape was still there, hanging impossibly low over his wheat. He flinched back as Lily rubbed her eyes. "Daddy? What's wrong?" He knelt, pulling her close, burying his face in her hair for a second. inhaling the scent of strawberry shampoo. Pause. How you explain the end of the world to a child? Nothing for you to worry about, sweet pea, he managed, his voice thick. Just something strange outside. We're going to stay inside for a bit, okay? He looked up at Sarah, her face ashen. She nodded mutely, pulling Lily closer to her side, her knuckles white where she gripped her daughter's shoulder. They huddled together in the darkened living room, the only sounds their ragged breathing and the frantic hammering of their own hearts, dwarfed by the silent, waiting presence outside. Dawn arrived, not with triumphant fanfare, but with a slow, gray creep that did nothing to dispel the dread. The triangular shape was gone, vanished as silently as it had appeared. The bird song returned, hesitant at first, then building to its usual morning chorus. The world seemed to exhale. Relief, sharp and dizzying, washed over Eli. He slumped against the wall, the shotgun clattering to the floor. Sarah let out a choked sob, pulling Lily into a fierce hug. "It's gone," Eli whispered, more to himself than anyone. "It's gone." He cautiously unbolted the door and stepped onto the porch. The air felt normal again, crisp with the morning chill. The wheat field stretched out, golden and undisturbed under the rising sun. Had he imagined it? Had exhaustion finally cracked him? He scanned the sky, empty and vast and blue. But the memory of that profound silence, that bone-deep vibration, was etched into him. It had been real. News trickled in slowly, fragmented and chaotic. Reports flooded social media and local news channels. Then the national networks. Not just Nebraska. Sightings. Everywhere. Over New York City, casting shadows across skyscrapers. Above the Grand Canyon. Stark against the layered rock. Hovering silently above cornfields in Iowa, deserts in Nevada, coastal towns in Maine. The descriptions were chillingly similar. Triangular, silent, dark, inducing a sense of profound stillness and low-frequency vibration. Governments scrambled. Military jets were scrambled, only to report nothing. Radar returns were ghostly or non-existent. Statements were issued, investigations underway. Public urged to remain calm. Report sightings. The word UAP replaced UFO in official briefings, but the meaning was the same. Something was here, and it wasn't leaving. The world held its breath. Markets plunged. Flights were grounded. Grocery stores were stripped bare. Fear, a thick, toxic fog, rolled across the planet. Conspiracy theories exploded like supernovas. Were they hostile? Observers? Precursors to invasion? Eli watched the news unfold on his laptop. Sarah beside him, her hand tightly clasped in his. Lily played quietly on the rug, seemingly oblivious to the global panic. Eli felt the fear, a cold knot in his gut, but beneath it, now that the initial shock had subsided, a different feeling stirred. Awe, the sheer, staggering scale of it. Intelligent life. Not microbes on a distant rock, but builders of impossible craft, crossing the unimaginable gulf of space. They came all this way, he thought, staring out at his wheat field. What for? He traced the rim of his coffee mug, a small, grounding gesture in the face of the cosmic. Days bled into a tense week. The ships, for there were many, though never more than one or two visible at a time in any location, remained aloof, silent, observing. They never reacted to military presence, never deviated from their slow, deliberate paths high in the atmosphere. The constant, low-level vibration became a background hum, unsettling but strangely familiar now. People began to tentatively emerge from their homes. Life, in a fractured way, resumed, but the world felt irrevocably changed. The sky was no longer just sky. It was a place where they might be watching. Eli found himself spending more time outside, not hiding, but looking up. He'd stand in his field at dusk, hands shoved in his pockets, head tilted back, searching the deepening blue. The fear hadn't vanished, but was now intertwined with profound, humbling wonder. He felt incredibly small, yet paradoxically connected to something vast. Sarah joined him sometimes, leaning her head against his shoulder, their silence a shared acknowledgement of the new reality. Then the message came, not through radio waves or intercepted signals. It simply appeared, One morning, as Eli walked the perimeter of his field checking for frost damage, he saw it, etched into the dew-covered leaves of a patch of soybeans near the fence line. Not words, not in any human language. A pattern, complex, elegant, geometric, yet undeniably intentional. It shimmered faintly in the early sunlight, composed of perfectly arranged droplets of water, as if the dew itself had been commanded to form this intricate sigil. His breath caught, softly, impossible. He dropped to his knees, heedless of the damp earth soaking through his jeans. He touched a leaf gently. The pattern held. It wasn't carved. It was composed. Nearby, he found another, subtly different. And another. He ran back to the house, shouting for Sarah. Soon, reports flooded global networks. The patterns were appearing everywhere. On beaches, in snowfields, on city sidewalks formed by condensation on windows, in the patterns of fallen leaves in forests. Always transient, fading with the sun or the wind, but captured endlessly by cameras. It was a global gesture, a greeting. Linguists, mathematicians, physicists, artists, and AI networks worldwide threw themselves into deciphering it. The patterns weren't static. They changed subtly over days, responded to each other across vast distances, forming a complex, evolving tapestry. They spoke of mathematics, yes, prime numbers, fractals, the golden ratio, but also of biology, depicting elegant representations of DNA spirals, cell division, complex ecosystems. They showed sequences of stars aligning, galaxies colliding and birthing new ones, and woven throughout, a recurring motif. Two distinct, intricate symbols approaching, interacting, exchanging smaller, simpler patterns, then parting. Connection, understanding, exchange. The message wasn't just hello. It was an introduction, a sharing of fundamental concepts, a declaration of peaceful intent, demonstrated through the universal languages of math and nature. A profound silent. We see you. We are like you in our curiosity. We wish to know you. The fear didn't vanish overnight. Suspicion ran deep. But the sheer beauty and peaceful complexity of the message began to erode the walls of terror. It was hard to look at those shimmering, ephemeral patterns, appearing on a child's sandcastle or a farmer's field, and see only a threat. Wonder bloomed, fragile but undeniable. Eli found Lily sitting cross-legged in the soybean patch one afternoon, carefully copying one of the alien patterns into her sketchbook with colored pencils, her tongue poking out in concentration. Sarah stood beside him, a hand resting lightly on his back. She calls at the sky writing, Sarah murmured, a tear glistening at the corner of her eye which she quickly wiped away. Eli felt a lump form in his own throat. The alien symbol for connection hovered delicately on the leaves beside his daughter, bathed in golden afternoon light. It felt like a benediction. The celebration wasn't fireworks or parades, at least not at first. It was quieter, deeper, a collective sigh of relief, so profound it felt like the planet itself exhaling. It was neighbors who had eyed each other with suspicion during the peak of the fear, meeting in the street and simply nodding, sharing a look of shared wonder and tentative relief. It was scientists openly weeping with joy at international press conferences as they unveiled layers of meaning within the patterns. It was musicians composing symphonies inspired by the geometric sequences, artists painting murals replicating the intricate designs on city walls. It was a hashtag skywriting trending globally, filled with awestruck photos and heartfelt messages of welcome. Eli and Sarah hosted a potluck in their barn. Neighbors brought dishes, their faces no longer pinched with anxiety, but alight with hesitant excitement. They talked late into the night, not about fear, but about possibilities, about the stars, about what it meant to no longer be alone. Laughter, real laughter, echoed under the rafters. Lily danced with other children, twirling under strings of fairy lights that seemed to echo the delicate patterns left in the fields. Eli raised a glass of homemade cider. To the neighbors, he said, his voice thick with emotion. 100 voices echoed him, glasses clinking. To the neighbors, the ships didn't land. They didn't descend from the sky. In a blaze of glory, they remained high, silent observers. But the patterns continued to appear, evolving. New sequences emerged, depicting complex chemical structures, elegant equations hinting at physics beyond human understanding, breathtakingly beautiful star maps pinpointing their origin, a distant binary star system. The exchange had begun. Humanity responded. We sent back our own messages. Not just radio waves, but vast light displays across deserts, complex patterns formed by synchronized drones in city skies, digital projections onto glaciers and mountainsides. We sent our mathematics, our art, our music, images of our planet teeming with life, our cities, our families. We sent our hopes. The silent hum in the air became less a vibration of dread and more a tangible thread of connection, a constant reminder of the incredible conversation unfolding above their heads. Research institutes sprang up dedicated solely to the dialogue. As it came to be known, the world, fractured by old conflicts, found a fragile unity in this shared cosmic experience. Resources poured into space exploration, renewable energy, global communication networks. Not for war, but for understanding. The presence in the sky became a catalyst, forcing humanity to look outward, and in doing so, perhaps finally see itself more clearly. Years later, Eli stood on the same spot in his north quarter. The wheat rustled softly, a sea of gold under a sky deepening to indigo. The first stars were pricking through. He wasn't looking for ships tonight, though he knew they were still there, high and silent. He looked up with simple familiarity. The fear was a distant memory, replaced by a profound, settled gratitude. Sarah joined him, slipping her hand into his. Her hair was streaked with more silver now, lines etched deep around her eyes, but they were lines born more of laughter and shared sunrises and fear. Lily, now a teenager engrossed in Zen linguistics at university, was video calling them later to discuss a new layer of meaning found in a recurring sequence depicting symbiotic relationships. Down in the valley, the lights of the small town glimmered, brighter now, powered by clean energy technologies reverse-engineered from fragments of understanding gleaned from the dialogue. A new structure, low and sleek and humming with quiet purpose, stood on the outskirts, a regional dialogue institute, where farmers like Eli sometimes consulted alongside astrophysicists, sharing their grounded perspective on the patterns that occasionally still grace their fields. Eli squeezed Sarah's hand. He thought of Lily's passion, of the global networks humming with shared discovery, of the quiet hum that was now the sound of a planet listening, learning, hoping. The vastness above was no longer terrifying emptiness. It was a shared neighborhood, a canvas alive with invisible conversation, a promise whispered across the light years. The alien presence hadn't brought utopia. Human nature, with all its flaws, endured, but it had shifted the axis. It had proven that wonder could conquer fear, that connection was possible across the deepest divides, that the universe held not just cold indifference, but the potential for profound kinship. He looked up at the emerging stars, countless points of light in the velvet dark. They weren't just distant suns anymore. They were signposts, possibilities, neighbors yet to be met, and the quiet hum in the air, the ever-present thread of connection, felt like a heartbeat, the shared, hopeful pulse of two civilizations learning to speak across the silent dark. Eli smiled, a quiet, enduring thing, etched not just on his face, but deep within his bones. He pointed upwards, not at any specific point, but at the infinite tapestry itself. Sarah followed his gaze, leaning her head against his shoulder. Together, under the watchful, silent stars and the unseen companions who had changed everything, they stood in the warm, wheat-scented night, listening to the universe breathe. The future wasn't written, but for the first time in human history, it felt truly, astonishingly open. The stars, he realized, looking up at the familiar constellations now holding new meaning, weren't just points of light. They were home, and we were no longer alone in the guest house. We had simply opened the door.